Hello and welcome to the Beyond the Bar podcast. And I am your host, Denisa Tova. So, my mission with this podcast is to connect with legal trailblazers, attorneys, judges, and really highlight their humanness. I don't know if that's the real word. And then we do that by having real conversations and exploring their personal journeys, personal interests, and really what life looks like beyond the bar. So today I am privileged to have with us a colleague and a dear friend, a very successful divorce attorney, James Joseph, who is a managing partner of Joseph Law. Now, James is a guy who is not just running a very successful law firm on Long Island, but he's doing it with heart. James is a community man, he's a family man, he's a great leader, and he loves to give back. He's sort of like the kind of a neighbor that you love to have. And he's also, and I have to say that, James, you are the king of efficiency, and you have a heart of for longevity, and we'll actually dive into all that. So welcome. It's really a pleasure to have you.
Well, thank you, Denisa. That's incredibly flattering. I'm not sure it's all deserved, but I do appreciate it, and I'm so happy to be here with you. So, thank you.
So you're in a hot seat today without any warning. You really are the epitome of efficiency. I remember you giving a talk to, it was a bar association. You also gave a talk to, it was a group of professionals and experts about bringing home an angry briefcase. And that stuck with me. That was way before COVID, because these days it would be like a virtual briefcase handed to you by like your AI avatar. So
Yes,
explain to you, right? And I'm real. I'm real. I hope you are as well.
of course.
So, James, explain to me what is an angry briefcase and how and why it bothered you enough to change how you practice and perhaps balance it with your life as well.
Sure. So, thank you for remembering that story. So, as you and I have discussed offline, I've been fortunate to work with management consultants for many years, really 2 decades now, and that's made all the difference. So, that story I have to give them credit for because they really enlightened me and made my practice, my firm, my team, my clients' lives a lot better. And that's one of the many stories that we tell. So many lawyers will leave work at the end of the day, and particularly at the end of their working week, and take home their briefcase because they don't have the time during the week to get to a fraction of the work that they intended to do, and so they load up their briefcase with memos and briefs and uh, correspondence that they didn't get to during the work week, and they take it home, and then they wake up in the morning on Saturday morning and there's the briefcase and they look at it and they're immediately in a bad spot and overwhelmed and tired, and their spouse and their children, if they have children, are all seeking their attention, and they really look at that briefcase and say it's the last thing they want to do. But all weekend that briefcase is yelling at them and saying, look at me, help, open me up and do the work. And many lawyers do very little of that work, if any. Even the ones that do the work, by having that briefcase on the floor, it's hanging over their head. They're not decompressing. They're not getting time to think, to relax, to unwind. Really unhealthy habit. Took me a long time to break it, I'll admit. But I think that my life is better because of it.
That's what that is. So are you saying that you don't have a angry briefcase staring at you right now?
So I'm speaking to you. I don't dress this way at home. For those that aren't watching the video, I'm wearing a tie. So there is a briefcase somewhere in my office, but it does not come home with me anymore. And even
Good.
I know so many people work remotely now. I I understand that there's value at times in doing that, but it's so important that even if you doing remote work, that somehow you segregate that from your personal home life. So
Yeah,
there's
even
the
more
angry
so,
briefcase.
right?
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yeah, even more so,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Because as the boundaries blur, as your home is no longer your sanctuary away from the office, when it's serving dual purposes, I think it can be very dangerous. There's benefits, of course, but it can be really dangerous to efficiency, to mental health, and I think that really leads to physical health issues. So you need to somehow cordon off that area and make sure that your downtime is your downtime.
I think that is an excellent point, especially now coming out of COVID where the hybrid models and working remotely has sort of become this new just new way of life, and you can really get caught in it, and like you said, those lines are blurred, and how do you segment, where do I stop and sort of a decompress, and so more so than ever before, and even sitting at dinner and watching a show and having that phone right next to you, it's really it's easy to slip into it. The next thing you know, you're working 24/7. So that I think is really important. You touched up on a great point, and really to segue into the health, and attaining that balance as we get older. I do really have a lot of admiration for your quest for longevity. We actually had a fun conversation about, I believe you purchased a sauna. That was your latest
Yes.
addition to the house,
Yeah.
and we are going to get to that. I know
Good.
there's a reason behind that, but James, what was that defining moment you told yourself that you wanted to make some changes in your life, and what have you changed?
So I'll tell you where it really first happens with me is as a young lawyer. I started my own practice largely because I hadn't found a firm. I wasn't with a firm that was they were great lawyers, but the firm is now defunct. They split up. Uh, they had a very heavy caseload and were very inefficient, and we were often just getting adjournments, buying time, and it was very overwhelming. It wasn't fair to the clients. It wasn't fair to the lawyers. So I started my own practice, and I swore, in my early 30s, that I would unequivocally be a better business person than that firm had been. And at first, I think I was, but the business came in quickly. I was good at what I did, and a lot of work came in. And before long, I was once again overwhelmed. And I remember where I was. I had a big case in New York City, and one of the older, well-known divorce lawyers from Manhattan. I was on the phone with him, and he said to me, "James, you're a great young lawyer. You have a really great future ahead of you. But if I can give you one piece of advice, please return phone calls quicker." And for me, that was everything I had tried to avoid. Broke out in a cold sweat in the car. I can tell you exactly where I was when we had this conversation. Fortunately for me, shortly after that, I learned about these consultants, and that started me down this path. I went to a 2-day seminar in Manhattan that they were giving, and the head of Atticus, those are the consultants that I work with, was telling us to stop working weekends. And I thought, stop working weekends? I That's crazy. I work every weekend and often long hours, and that's what I need to do to be a real professional. I thought, but it was starting to make sense. So during one of the breaks, I pulled him aside, Mark Powers, who's now become a dear friend. And I said, "Mark, I love everything you're saying, but you have to understand." And I said, "My goal, I want to be the best divorce lawyer on Long Island. And you're telling me to work less. I don't get it." He said to me, "James, let me ask you a couple of questions. One, do you think that writing another motion will make you a better lawyer?" I thought, good point. I guess not. And he said, "What if you had time to think? What if you had time to strategize?" And that really is where the bells went off. It made a lot of sense to me. And that set me down this now 20-year path of really recognizing to, we all define success differently, but for what I view as a successful life, which isn't just being great at what you do, but having a well rounded life where you're making an impact on your community, on your family, on your friends, enjoying life. I realized that I had to become more efficient and I had to be healthy, because if we're not healthy, the rest not only can become meaningless, but become incredibly difficult. Uh, you know, Obviously, for those who don't know you or haven't seen you in person, fitness is very important to you in your life. It's something that we both share, and 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 I know I do it in large part for my mental health. It's what keeps me stable. It allows me to think to function at my best. So that's the beginning of this long journey. And I know you're hot to get into the longevity topic. More than happy to broach it when you're ready. But that brings me down this path.
That is extremely important, and the fitness, absolutely, and it becomes a way of life, and I have people ask me, "Well, how do I get into it? How do I get how do I get, toned and muscular and or how do I get in shape?" And, you don't have to love it. You embrace it like you would brushing your teeth. You make it part of your habit. Just know, don't ask, your brain how you feel about something. If you know it's a good habit, just get out there and do it. Now, you mentioned that, you went to this seminar that was eye-opening, and there was the thought sort of originated to practice differently. And we all read, we accumulate tools, and I think it's part of human nature to know that we should implement some changes, but we don't have a courage to do that, right? Especially in your field, you are courageous to embrace a different model. When you first introduced that, at home and to your firm, and even started practicing it. I mean, what did it feel like? Because it's very different when you're billing so many hours, returning so many phone calls. You focused on getting so many clients, and now you're saying, "Wait a second. Okay, first of all, I am not going to work on the weekends." What was that like? The process of implementing that change?
So admittedly scary in the beginning. It outside of my friends that are part of this consulting world, it's certainly not the norm. Maybe now the new generation of lawyers is coming up with a different mindset, but certainly my generation was, if you wanted to be a successful lawyer, that meant that's what you do, and you do nothing else, and you work long, hard hours, and that's how you become great at what you do, and that's how you fulfill your professional duties. So this was going against the grain of everything that I had observed and been taught on some level. What I found was that we became much more efficient. One of the things, one of the conversations I often have with other attorneys, particularly when I had a full caseload, which I no longer do managing the firm, we would have a case on for trial, and the adversary would be lamenting to me that they're owed $100,000. And I would say, "This is crazy." And I had been there when I was a young lawyer, and I thought I was doing right, and I thought I was, the knight in shining armor, saving the day, for the client who had been wronged somehow. Now I realize that we're doing our clients a tremendous disservice when we do that. That we're dragging them through litigation that they can't afford, and extending the case unnecessarily long, causing a lot of damage in the process. So by by working less, we were able to focus a little bit on the business side of it, a word which was a dirty word to me as a young lawyer. As a professional, we don't talk business. One of the stories I like to share is, as a young lawyer, shortly after I started my practice, I remember a woman came in and we were preparing for the custody trial. And she said to me when she sat down, "James, I know I owe you money. I want to discuss that." And I said to her, "No, no, I know you owe me money too. Let's talk about your case first, and we'll talk about the money after." And I really believed I was doing the right thing. Now I realize that's crazy. That's all that does is prolong the matter and cause a lot of pain. And that's I this isn't my pro bono work. I do a lot of charitable work in my life. I've been very active in quite a few nonprofits and remain active. So I do my charity outside of the office. But by focusing in the office on cases that can afford to pay us, it allows us to work less. And not that we're
Hmm.
lazy. My attorneys work very hard when they're here, but I believe, I've often said to people, look, there's a lot of smart, hardworking lawyers out there. Where I think that we excel, where we differentiate ourselves, is that our lawyers have time to decompress so that when they come in on Monday morning, they're not already strung out, already overwhelmed because all weekend they had that angry briefcase yelling at them, or perhaps the briefcase wasn't angry because they opened it and worked all weekend. They've had time to get away from this, and they come in much calmer, more level-headed, and better able to move their cases forward efficiently. And so, in the beginning, to answer your question, yes, it was scary. Pretty quickly, as we implemented the necessary changes, it became so beneficial, and it's been,
Hmm.
really life changing.
Speaking of life changing, getting back to longevity now. So, what are let's talk about some of your habits that you've adapted, and what inspired you to pursue? I call it a quest. Well, who wouldn't want a quality of life? But I'm curious about what does that look like for you?
So, so what does that look like? So, I have a number of habits that I've developed over the years, and I periodically add another habit. So, maybe 5 years ago, I began meditating. I'm a slow adapter, so I had been reading and hearing about it for a long time, but I couldn't wrap my head around getting started. And then a friend, told me about an app, and I started with the Headspace app, which I think you probably get free for a month, and it's guided meditation. So you just put it on your iPhone and put on your headphones and meditate for 10 to 20 minutes. There's so much of what I do is science backed. So to the extent that some of your listeners aren't familiar with some of these techniques, I will say do the research. Your audience are lawyers, and I swear to you, I've done a lot of research on all of this, and it makes a lot of sense to me. It's very sound. One of my friends who presents, I did a presentation at the state bar a number of years ago. And I brought in one of my buddies to present with me, who does a great piece on meditation, and he shares a slide with, I think, the Marine Corps now has all the Marines meditating. So he could address, the people who had some reservations. So I meditate every
So if
day. I
they can do it, the lawyers can do it.
Yes, yes, exactly, right, right. So we can, yes. So I meditate. So the next thing is journaling. Uh, Journaling, lots of ways to do it, lots of science uh, backing the value of journaling. My handwriting is atrocious. I don't like handwriting. I've tried to journal in books and I just can't do it. I can't read my own handwriting and I don't enjoy writing, but there's an app for that too. The one that I use is the 5 minute journal. And literally it's 5 minutes, but it's amazing the change in mindset that makes. So when I first wake up and I dictate, much to my children's chagrin, it seems to be my generation that dictates and not their generation. Uh, but you start with there's three areas that the three pages that it has for you to fill out. So it's the first thing is, what three things am I grateful for? And it really begins to change your mindset. So before journaling, and to this day, if I don't journal, like most people, I wake up and instead of being grateful for waking up, which to me is a really rational response to waking up that we should all feel, but very hard to do. I wake up and I think, oh crap, I have my podcast today with Denisa, and I haven't looked at my notes, the instructions she sent me, and that's not a good way to wake up, and that's not a good way to start your day. So instead, I start my day with what am I grateful for, and it's quick, but it really develops a good habit that makes real changes in your brain. I understand the science when I read about it, but I can't repeat it. But there's a lot of great studies behind that. After that, what three things will I do to make today a great day? And they don't have to be big, but something that you can reasonably accomplish, and you can feel good about at the end of the day. And then there's a place for some affirmations, also something that done right can be very impactful. So that's the second thing that I do. Not every day. I try to do it every day, but most days I make sure that I journal. Weightlifting is a big part of my life. And part of the longevity quest, the more we learn, the more importance weight training is. Again, particularly as we get older, as the body naturally loses muscle tone, which can lead to falls when people are later and also older, and all sorts of problems. Some sort of aerobic activity, whether I row, I go on the Peloton. Uh, at work, we're in a 9-story office building here, and I try to take breaks every hour or two, and I'll go walk the stairs for 5 or 10 minutes. it gets you to what's known as zone two training. It's not, I don't break a sweat because again, I dress this way when I come to work, but very important from a longevity standpoint. And then as we talked about earlier, the sauna is the most recent addition to my health and wellness longevity quest.
Wow. That and I don't want to say wow every single time you answer a question or we finish talking, but this really is wow because it completes and embodies such a diverse and well balanced um, longevity quest, staying healthy, alert, and it's interesting. Like you mentioned meditation. I'm a doer. I have a very active mind, and it was tough for me to get into meditation. But surprisingly, some of my best ideas are born in meditation. And despite what people think, is you have to completely let go and not think essentially and focus and not think about the next brief and the next client and the dishes and what you're going to do. And it's actually okay because what you're doing is when you're noticing these thoughts is you're observing those thoughts and you are supposed to become the observer and sort of separate yourself. So many people who give up on meditation way too quickly don't realize they're actually succeeding in meditating, and it just becomes habitual. I mean, just calms your heart rate. So I love that. And you're right, starting the day that way as opposed to pulling out your phone and going, oh crap, I got to answer that email and that email. So it sets a tone. So that's really great. And I know that you mentioned your charitable mindset and that you like to give back, James, to the community. Tell me about your Thanksgiving Day Turkey Trot initiative. How did it begin, and why did you start it?
Sure. So thank you for bringing that up. So fast approaching Thanksgiving. So 10 years ago, along with two of my friends, also attorneys, we had been talking about doing something for charity. I had been very involved with the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society for many years. I'm very fortunate to be a leukemia survivor. Perhaps another story for another podcast, but I was diagnosed when I was 34, had a stem cell transplant 7 years later, a very high risk procedure, and am the poster child for perfect outcomes. So I'm just so incredibly grateful that I'm cured, that I have no side effects, and that dark time in our lives is now a distant memory. And so I had been raising money, doing different in different ways for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. I was a board member on their executive committee for 10 years, and with these two friends, we said, "Hey, what can we do? What could we do to raise some money and to beyond just raising the money have a positive impact?" And at the time, my two friends, Tom Foley and Brian Griffin, lived in Massapequa. There had been a very successful, there's quite a few turkey trots around Long Island, but there had been one in Garden City that still exists where they raise a lot of money each year for Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. And we said maybe we could do that in Massapequa. It's a far enough trip from Garden City that we're not going to pull from the same population. And we started it, and it's been an incredible hit. I think we get 1,800 runners. I think on average the last few years. We missed a year or two during COVID, but it's turned into a really wonderful family tradition for the people that show up. So a lot of people just show up because it's a nice way to start Thanksgiving to feel a little bit better about all the turkey and pie you're going to eat later in the day. And then quite a few people show up to support the charity. So we've been supporting LLS for many years. This year we're going to branch out and support another local charity with the funds. But we make nothing out of it, and we give quite a bit, but it's incredibly rewarding. So just a really nice event. Our children all grew up being part of running it, so it really helped instill in them a very healthy charitable spirit. Later in life, when their schools all required them to have public service time, they would bring in all their friends from school and they'd help out, whether they, with the water stops and T-shirt distribution. So it's just been a big part of our lives for a long time.
Wow, what a great way to give back. I I get emotional. I like to hear good things. I am tired of turning on just about anything and just hearing the negative stuff. And one of the things that inspired me to start this podcast, James, is because of people like you, stories like you that normally would not make it to the light. and the surface unless you had these conversations. And I think more practitioners really need to hear this, so we can start treating each other with respect. And I am even talking about camaraderie, between professionals, so they do not see each other as adversaries in court. We're all human beings, and we have that inside. Um, Completely random. What makes you laugh?
What makes me laugh? Lots of things make me laugh. I've been fortunate. We have a lot of good friends, and we spend a lot of time together and have a lot of fun and a lot of laughs. So that's
Friends.
a critical part. As you and I have shared, we've both had our as everybody at some point in life, unfortunately, will deal with some pretty heavy stuff, and it's critical to laugh. And I make sure I laugh every day.
Love it. Love it, love it, love
Yes.
it. And we have been smiling and smiling big, and I am still smiling big. And I will definitely have you back. And it's been such a pleasure having you, James. And you've inspired me. And thank you so much for sharing your unique journey and really journey about a courage, to be different. I love that. Just to do what's important to you and sticking with it. So thank you very much. You're a true inspiration. And to all of you out there, thank you so much for listening and watching our Beyond the Bar podcast. You can find detail with James's bio and how to get hold of James in a description below. And make sure to hit that subscribe button so you do not miss any of our upcoming episodes. And until next time, I am Denisa Tova, your host with Beyond the Bar.
Thank you, Denisa.